Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Do you want to get a raise, a promotion, perhaps a better job? If so, then at some point you'll be in an interview situation. And this is where the presentation skills you use to deliver a speech or make a presentation at the office can really come in handy. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bachman, the host of Speakers Who Get Results. And this is the podcast where we talk about leadership, visibility, communication challenges, and especially presentation skills. Today, I want to talk to you about how you can really ace that interview, really be fabulous, shine in that interview, so that you can be promoted or maybe hired for a better job. As a trainer for high-level women in tech and law to help them get past the glass ceiling, I am always using these presentation skills, but I'm surprised at how many people miss them, how many people don't realize the connection between the skills you need to do a speech and the skills you need for an interview. Actually, anytime you're doing a presentation where you want to move people to take action or influence your colleagues, that is a form of a sales speech. And in an interview, you're selling yourself. You're selling the idea that they should hire you. The tricky part is, as I said earlier, you are the product. And that opens the doors to so many challenges, all the voices in our heads that try to sabotage us. I think of presentation skills as three parts: strategy, script, and style. The strategy today is going to be strategies for how to get that promotion, how to prepare yourself, and how to avoid the traps that so many of us fall into. Script is what do you actually say when you're in the interview and how you can prepare yourself for the questions and the challenges that they're going to throw you. And style is who you are in the room, how you show up. What is it that's going to make you somebody interesting for them to hire? Now, no woman is an island. And I must say that for today's topic, I'm leaning heavily on two of my very close colleagues from whom I have always learned a lot. I learn a lot every time. Kimmy Avery of Super Genius Teams is an expert on helping men and women talk to each other and actually hear each other. Tina Greenbaum of Mastery Under Pressure has a wonderful course called How to Be a Confident Negotiator. I work with the two of them a great deal, and today I'm going to be using things that the two have taught me. They've both been frequent guests on this podcast, so I'll be posting the links to the episodes where they were my guest in the show notes. Be sure you check the show notes when you're finished here. The reason why I care about this is because it took me years to learn how to be confident in an interview, to walk into an interview and not give away my power. I did that for far too long. And then I would see the jobs I wanted go to louder, flashier people who came off as sounding more confident. They may not have been, but they came off that way. Or we were doing the same job, we were working on the same team, but they were getting paid more than I was. I knew it was happening. I was really frustrated, but I didn't know then what I know now about how to change my behavior. So my passion really is to help you not make the same mistakes that I made, but truly learn how to shine in that interview. I'm going to start with strategy because, of course, that shapes everything that comes afterwards. I'd like to talk today about homework, doing your research, and how to avoid the traps that we can so easily fall into. How to recognize where fear is sabotaging you, and how the way you are asking might be getting in the way of getting what you want. Thinking about homework, make sure you do your research. Now, this is pretty basic, it's pretty obvious, and yet I'm surprised at how many people stop with the obvious questions of, what are they looking for? What do they want from me? I believe that rule number one in any sort of presentation is make it about them. Use strategic empathy to put yourself in their shoes. Think about not only what are they looking for, but what sort of pressures might they be facing? If you're talking to your boss about a promotion or a raise, what are the pressures that your boss is facing, and how could promoting you ease some of those pressures? Think about the larger picture. Then, of course, in doing your research, you want to learn everything you can about what the position entails. You don't have to be 150% ready. One of the ways that I see so many women sabotage themselves is where a man will look at the qualifications on a job listing, and if he's got 30%, he'll apply. So often a woman will look at the list and she may have 98%, but she won't apply because she's missing that last 2%. That need to be perfect, that need to have it all is something that society has cursed us with, and it gets in our way. Think of it this way. The list of qualifications in a job posting are a wish list. Nobody ever fits all the qualifications that they look for. That doesn't exist. It's all the things they'd like to have, but any halfway decent employer is going to be ready to adapt, is going to assume that they're going to adapt to the human beings who apply. So go for it. Make the ask. Apply. Give it a try. Next, when you're doing your research, don't just stop at what they're going to expect about you. That's what lazy people do. Too often you'll see someone who gets the job and then they sit back and wait to be told what's expected of them. What's your vision? Think as a strategic thinker. What could you do with this promotion? What could you do if you had this raise? What could you do if you got this job? How could what you do benefit the division, the department, the company, the organization as a whole? Think strategically about the larger picture, because certainly that's what the upper levels of the company are doing. If you show yourself to be a strategic thinker, it's going to be really easy to promote you because people want strategic thinkers in the upper levels. The other thing about research is don't forget to research the money. Now, this is a scary topic for men and women. Asking for money is scary for a lot of us. You can look online these days for what comparable salaries would be. There's lots of information out there. If you find it challenging, certainly this is something that took me a long time to learn. If you find this is challenging, work with your coach or ask a trusted friend. Work with a partner who will make sure that you're asking for enough or asking for more than you expect to get, and then hold you accountable. Here's where I turn to Tina Greenbaum of Mastery Under Pressure, and especially her excellent course on how to be a confident negotiator. She's said many, many really useful things. The one that I tend to focus on is know when you're ready to walk away. What is the level below which you will not go? What's the salary level below which you will not go? Or if they say they can't pay you that kind of cash, what kind of benefits can you get instead? Be ready to negotiate. Assume you're going to negotiate. Too many people, women especially, will settle for the first offer. Remember, any promotion or any job is only one in a continuum. It's never going to be the last opportunity. Somehow, somehow from childhood, many of us have this feeling that we have to say yes because it's the only offer we're going to get. You have options. If it's not the right fit, walk away. And be sure to check the show notes for this episode for the link to the full interview with Tina Greenbaum on how to be a confident negotiator. The second part of strategy is recognizing where fear might be getting in the way. Now, I'll be speaking later about the fear that comes up when you're actually in the interview. But what about the fear that stops you from asking in the first place? So many women, especially, resist asking for a promotion because they're afraid of a negative answer. They're afraid of being thought pushy or greedy or whatever. There are so many things. It comes from childhood. There are lots of reasons that this comes from. Recognize when that's happening to you. And that takes me to the way you ask. The third and most important part of strategy is how the way you ask can sabotage whether you get promoted or hired. Let's talk about this in terms of promotions, because that's the one where it shows up the most. When a woman, there are two pieces. When a woman asks for a meeting to discuss a promotion, if the timing is wrong, she won't be heard. And secondly, women tend to drop hints instead of asking outright. Now, if you do that when a man is focused on something else, he won't realize it and won't actually hear you. I need to pause here for a minute and also say that one of the things I use a great deal in my work is how men and women communicate. This is something I've been thinking about for many years. And when I started working with Kimmy Avery, she clarified it for me in a way that I said, okay, I'm going to use this information forever. Women tend to sabotage themselves through language. And the principles I've learned from Kimmy have informed the way I communicate ever since. As a matter of fact, teaching these principles to my clients has worked over and over again to help them get the promotions or raises that they wanted, or even better jobs. One of the traps people fall into all the time is to assume that the person you're talking to communicates and listens the same way that you do. But it's actually not the same. Men and women speak different languages. I first learned about this in the 80s when I was studying Japanese. And I realized and I learned that Japanese has men's language and women's language. There are words and phrases in Japanese that only men use and words and phrases that only women use. Well, as it happened, my career took me to Europe instead of Asia. So I've forgotten most of the Japanese that I've learned. But that thought, that idea has stuck with me ever since. And the more that I work with people in English, especially business English, if English is not your first language, the more I see that men and women have different languages in English and in many other cultures. Let me stick to English to keep it simple. One of the things, there's a lot of talk about masculine speaking and feminine speaking. I like to think of it as single-focused versus multi-focused. Single-focused people do one project at a time. They do it until it's done, and they're focused exclusively on that project. They can't think about anything else. And this is wonderful. Western business is built on single-focused principles. This is how things get done. The disadvantage is that a single-focused person or team can be so excited about this wonderful project that they're working on that they don't notice the side issues, that the traps that they're about to walk into. Is as if they're wearing blinkers. Multi-focused people, mostly women, think about many things at once. They talk about lots of things. They can talk about what they saw out the window and news about a friend. And, oh, by the way, I need to talk to you about this project. When could we do that? Women tend to notice the side issues that the men won't notice, such as, and this is an actual thing that happened to one of my clients, to say to a group of men, before we invest all this time and money on this project, did you realize that our competitors already have this? They're already offering it. They've done the development. It's already out on the market. That was one where she was shut down. They didn't want to hear, and the money was wasted. Or even before we create this new procedure, this new program, has anybody even asked the clients if they want it? These are the things that the multi-focused people will notice. The problem comes when each person thinks the other person has heard them, and they haven't. The two things I want to focus on today are timing and dropping hints. Multi-focused women get in the habit of talking about many things at once, as I said earlier, and they're likely to hear and take in many things. They may not focus on them exclusively, but they'll hear it. However, when you've got a man single focused on a project and a woman comes in and starts to talk to him, it's an interruption. It's annoying. And he's likely not to hear or not to really pay attention. Where the solution is to make an appointment. I have to say, when Kimmy Avery taught me this one, it changed my life. I made such a difference when I'm working with the single focused people, because I can be multi-focused. And times when I'm multi-focused, I can tell the people around me, don't talk to me now. I can think about this after 3:00. Make an appointment. You can go to your manager, for instance, and say, I need 30 minutes with you to talk about a possible promotion. When would be a good time? And then he'll say, oh, I can't think about it now. How about 4:00 this afternoon? Then at 4:00 in the afternoon, you show up, you've got your points that you want to talk about. Be concise. Don't tell all the background. Single focused people don't care about context. They don't care about all the details. They just want you to get to the point. Talk about it at 4:00 when you have his full single focused attention. I mean, that's the great thing is when you do have the single focused person's, the man's attention, you have all their attention. That's wonderful. And it's really honors you. The other part of this is when you make the appointment, shut up. The other way that women sabotage themselves all the time is make the appointment and then they keep on talking. Don't give them the background when they can't listen to you. Don't give them all the things that you want to talk about at 4:00. Just make the appointment. If you keep on talking, the single focus person is going to be really annoyed and irritated. And then that irritation will show up at the 4:00 appointment. Make the appointment, let him get back to whatever he was working on, and wait your turn. Wait until you can take care of this. The other important part is about women dropping hints. I have to say that when Kimmy told me about this, I thought, no, really? And then the more I noticed how much I was dropping hints instead of actually asking, it blew my mind. And now I can't unsee it. I notice it all the time that I do it, the women around me do it. Well, if you're dropping hints, the man doesn't really know if this is a question. Is this really a request? Is this something he's supposed to pay attention to? I don't know where it came from that women were trained to not be direct, but it gets us in trouble. Where this matters as far as promotions is you may think that you've asked for a promotion, but if you've done it in an indirect way, they won't have heard you. Too many women, happens a lot, too many women will find that they think that their boss doesn't care about them. They say, my boss doesn't take me seriously. He knows I want this promotion and he doesn't ever talk about it. He doesn't listen to me when I'm talking about this. But have you actually asked? Or have you just dropped hints? This is what happened to my client, Martha. Before she was a client of mine, she had a great vision for the company. She knew exactly the promotion that she wanted. And so she wrote an article, a proposal about how she saw how she could truly help the organization, where this would make a difference. She sent it to her boss, Jason, and said, here's an article I think you'll enjoy. Jason didn't realize that it was a request. Martha thought that she had asked for the promotion. Jason thought, oh, this is something that I can be able to read someday. I'll get to it whenever I have time. And of course, it got buried in the next 50 to 500 emails. So when Martha went back to Jason and said, what did you think of the article? Jason had completely forgotten about it. Martha was furious, but she did the typical thing. She smiled. She said, it's okay. Get to it when you get a chance, and disconnected. And then she was so angry and resentful. She called her female friends to say, he didn't listen. Here's the article I wrote, my baby, I slaved over it. And he doesn't care. He doesn't take me seriously. I think I'm going to quit. And her friends, her female friends, because they'd only heard her side of the story, were saying, absolutely, walk away. He doesn't take you seriously. Fortunately, one of the friends said, call Elizabeth and talk about this before you actually quit. And indeed, when we analyzed the situation, we realized that it was a case of miscommunication. Jason didn't know that she was actually asking for the promotion because she hadn't actually asked. She was reading she was reading into his reaction an emotion that wasn't actually there. We were able to develop a strategy for her where she could ask for the promotion, she could show her value to the company, and indeed, she got the promotion. She's very happy about it. But have you ever been there? I've certainly done that. Dropped a hint, you think someone's heard you. Again, the more you notice these things, the more you can recognize where you are sabotaging yourself, the easier it is to then not make that mistake, but to move ahead. Now let's talk about script. Once you're in the interview, what do you actually say? Well, of course, you can prepare for it. This goes back to rule number 1, make it about them. Use strategic empathy to put yourself in their shoes. The 2 key things are remember to listen and prepare your stories, both the good ones and the bad ones. This is important because one of the traps we fall into is we're so nervous in the interview that they ask us a question and we blather on and on and on, telling a story with way more detail, maybe not getting to the point. This has happened to me way back at the beginning of my opera career. I lost a job I should have gotten because I babbled on and I forgot to say the most important thing. They hired somebody else. I've learned from that to prepare and to remind myself not to do that again. When you've done your research, you've imagined, you put yourself in their shoes with strategic empathy, you've imagined the pressures that they're facing. Now, when you're in the interview, remember to listen. Yes, they are interviewing you, but you're interviewing them as well. Listen to what they're saying and what can you find out from their body language, their words, the things they're not saying that take you below the surface. Here again, it's where you want to talk about your vision. Go below the surface. Ask some of the questions that are not the obvious questions. If you've done your research, you can come in, say this is a job interview. If you've done your research, you can say something like, congratulations, I saw that your company just got an award. How much of that was you? How much were you involved in that? How does that affect you? How does that affect your department? Digging below the surface a little bit instead of just an empty bravo and move on. Or maybe you could say, I've seen that there was an initiative this company had that didn't go so well. How did that affect you? How are you dealing with it? I only know what I can read online. What's your side of the story? Again, go below the surface, ask intelligent questions, and listen. The second part on script is prepare your stories. For instance, if you're asking for a promotion or a raise, go through, hopefully every week, you have tracked what your successes are. This is something that my clients and I do together, where we keep an ongoing record of what are the achievements once a week or once every 2 weeks at least. Keep an ongoing record and then tell your manager, I tell my coach, tell your manager about what has gone well. Or if something has not gone well, what are you doing about it? This is hard to do on your own because most of us are trained not to brag about our own successes. What's really helpful here is to have a partner. Do this with your coach or do this with your accountability partner. Get together at least every 2 weeks. Track your successes. Talk about the things that have gone wrong. Talk about the things that you're still working on. Every 6 weeks or so, go through that ongoing list and pick a couple of accomplishments that you're going to write stories about. The great thing about doing this with a partner is your partner will say, hey, don't gloss over that one. That's a real accomplishment. And you can do this for your partner. It's always easier to see how someone else is doing that. So keep the appointment and keep it sacred. Don't blow it off. It's something that you have to do. You will be so glad later. Then when it's time to ask for a raise or a promotion, you've got a list of your accomplishments. Not only do you have the list, but you can tell the story, maybe 1 to 3 minutes long, about what the problem was, how you solved it, and what's the benefit to the company. Keep these stories, polish these stories. Once you have them, you'll use them forever. If you go to another company, you can still say, back at my old company, here's how I learned this. One of the other things that's important here is to practice. Polish these stories, write them out first, say them out loud. When you hear the words come out of your mouth, you will hear where perhaps you missed something or where a phrase that made sense on the page doesn't actually make sense when you speak it. Practice it so it rolls easily off your tongue, because if you're nervous, if you're inclined to babble on and on, as I talked about earlier, the practice will help you a lot. Another piece of this is they're going to ask you in a job interview, they're going to ask you about times you've done badly. Where did you make a mistake? And most people I know hate this question. I like to think of framing it as way back at the beginning of my career, I made this mistake. Now that's how I know never to do it again. The story I told earlier about losing a job because I babbled on and I forgot to say the most important part. That's that kind of story. Or here's something that I'm good at, and here's what I'm not so great at. So if you can talk about, they could say, where are you not strong? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Or where are you not so great? You might say something like, for me, I am really, really good with words and language. Graphics, not so much. I can put together a PowerPoint, but I'm slow. I don't do it well. However, if you put me together with someone who thinks in pictures, we are unbeatable. So that's a way that you can say, here's what I'm really, really good at. Here's where I'm not so great. I would rather not be doing the graphics. But if you know that you put me together with someone who's great at graphics, not so great at words, they'll have a good team. That's important information. That's useful for an employer to know. The third part is style, your delivery style. How do you show up in the interview? I promised I'd talk more about fear. This is where fear can really make us nervous, make us forget things, as I was saying before. One of my favorite techniques for dealing with stage fright, because that's what it is to go back to rule number 1, make it about them, use strategic empathy to put yourself in their shoes. I invite you to close your eyes for a minute and imagine a dinner party at your home, wherever it is that you serve food. The people that you're going to interview with are guests at your party. Imagine your table surrounded by happy people, excited people who are hungry for what you have to offer. Once you've pictured it, reach out as if to embrace them and say, "Welcome to my party. I have a gift for you." Where we can get ourselves in trouble is when we walk into an interview or tune into an interview thinking they have the power, I'm taking something from them. This is one that at the beginning of my career, I used to feel and was helped out of it by a coach. I used to think that by asking for money, for asking to be paid for my worth, I was taking something from them. I've certainly heard many of my clients say this. But in reality, you are giving them the gift of your expertise. If you can get out of your head and stop the voices that are telling you, oh, you're hurting them by asking them for money. That was an old one I used to have. Think about how you can benefit them. Your skill, your expertise is like the dinner you're going to serve the guests. They're hungry. They need somebody in that position. So they're hungry for what you have to offer. You are the gift. What you bring them is the gift. And don't forget, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. If it's not a good fit, walk away. You have the power. You don't have to give it away. I hope these tips have been helpful. Let me review. There are 3 parts: strategy, script, and style. The strategy is do your homework, notice how fear could be getting in the way, and pay attention to the way you are asking. Make sure that they have a chance that you're speaking to them in a way that they can hear you. Script are the stories that you tell, the stories you tell, and speaking, taking your time, listening, do your research and listening. And delivery style is, again, make it about them. You have the power. You are offering them the opportunity to invest in the success of their organization by hiring you or giving you a promotion so that you are a gift. There's so much more about this, but I really love applying these techniques. With these techniques, 3 of my clients in the last 12 months have landed wonderful new positions that they're very happy with. It works. I promise that it works. I'll be posting the links to Kimmy Avery's interviews and Tina Greenbaum's interviews in the show notes to this episode. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And if this has been helpful, please like us on YouTube, subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a review on whatever app you listen to podcasts on. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.